Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to submit into the record a report from the Heritage Foundation titled "The Tax Cuts and Job Act's 12 Myths Debunked."
So moved.
Thank you, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today and to share your expertise on this critical issue. It's no secret that state and federal tax policies strongly impact economic growth and opportunities for all Americans. Every tax dollar that the IRS collects is a dollar that hardworking families don't get to put towards food on the table or a night out at the movies. And it's a dollar that businesses don't get to put towards raises for their employees or capital expenditures. Repeatedly, we've seen the positive impact of tax cuts on everyday Americans. For example, in the 2 years after the passage of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, real median household income increased by over $5,000. Yet President Biden and congressional Democrats continue to push for higher taxes and spending with complete disregard for the impact on inflation, the impact on long-term economic growth, and the impact on American, and even more specifically, Hoosier families and businesses. The American Rescue Plan, which was ran through without a single Republican vote, supercharged inflation, saddled everyday Americans and small businesses and small business owners with burdensome new paperwork requirements on transactions over $600. The Inflation Reduction Act, which was also ran through without a single Republican vote, imposed American manufacturers with over $100 billion in new taxes. Meanwhile, the Biden administration's loose regulatory interpretations have ballooned the cost of new tax credits to over 700% of their original projected cost. What we should be focused on is how to incentivize growth, how to incentivize more research and more development within the United States. For example, a study published in the Journal of Public Economics estimated that when a business received a 10% reduction in their R&D costs, they increased research spending in intensity by about 19.8%. Additionally, they found that most of the increased spending went to increases in wages and supplies. This clearly illustrates the broad benefits in allowing businesses to expense or receive tax credits for research and development. So my question for Mr. McBride to start, can you speak to the economic impact of R&D tax credits and deductions on everyday Americans?
Sure. So this gets to the discussion we were having earlier about consumption being a driver of the economy. It's true that consumption is about 70% of GDP, for instance, but it is investment that happens first to get to that consumption. It's investment that creates the income ultimately out of which we consume. And so it's investment that should be prioritized here, and that's what we should be discussing here. And it is R&D investment in particular that is incentivized by R&D expensing. So yes, it's very, very important provision.
And how would that help everyday Americans or even Hoosiers that, just median income Hoosiers?
So it leads to greater R&D expenditures. R&D leads to innovation. Innovation leads to better products, better consumer products, more efficiencies in the workplace, which in turn leads to higher productivity ultimately. And workers are paid based on their productivity. So that means higher wages.
Right. Estimates by the Cato Institute show that, quote, if Congress confiscated every dollar earned by individuals and businesses past their first $500,000, it would still be about $200 billion short of covering the cost of next year's projected $1.7 trillion deficit. Mr. McBride, do you believe that this shows that we have a spending problem or a revenue problem in Washington?
I think the clearest picture is from the CBO, and they simply do their 10-year projection. Looking forward, they're showing on average spending is going to be about 24% of GDP over the next 10 years. That's about 3 to 4 percentage points higher than the historic average. Okay, and then we have revenues also higher than the historic average, coming in about 18%. So I think that is all you need to know going forward, if it's spending or revenues that are the problem.
Thank you. And Mr. Mazur, part of my job is ensuring that Hoosiers and small businesses and families don't pay higher taxes. That's a result of Washington's overspending. And in your opening testimony, you stated and complained that you now pay less taxes today as a percentage than what you did prior. So I just want to make sure that you're aware that the Treasury Department actually has a program where if you don't feel like you're paying enough taxes, you can send in additional dollars, and that would help make sure that my constituents don't bear the cost of the overspending here in Washington. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
I'm well aware of that program. I also don't have a Roth IRA for a similar reason, that I enjoy paying my taxes because, like they say, taxes are the price you pay for a civilized society.
Thank the gentleman from Indiana.